Genesis 1:1 tells you God created everything. Genesis 1:2 tells you the earth was already ruined. Nobody talks about what happened between those two verses. That gap changes everything. If God created the heavens and earth on day 1, what was here when he showed up? What was functioning on days 2, 3, 4, and 5, before humans ever existed? The Bible doesn't hide the answer. It scatters it. And once you see it, you can unsee it. Look at the Hebrew word in Genesis 1:2. Tuhu vabuhu, formless and void. Chaos, waste, desolation. But Isaiah 45:18 says something that contradicts the surface reading. God himself declares, "I did not create the earth formless." That's the contradiction that opens the rabbit hole. If God didn't create it formless, then something made it that way. Something happened between verse 1 and verse 2. The Bible doesn't spell it out directly, but the clues are everywhere. Jeremiah 4:23 through 26 describes an earth that's already been destroyed. He uses the exact same phrase, tuhu vabohu. Cities broken down, darkness everywhere. No humans, but humans had to exist first for cities to be built. Someone was here. Something had structure. Ezekiel 28 gives you the identity of who was in charge. God addresses Satan and says he walked among stones of fire. He had been in Eden. He possessed a kingdom. He had authority over territories before his fall. You don't fall from a throne. You never occupy. This is where most teaching stops, because the answers get uncomfortable. But the possibilities are worth exploring. Possibility 1. An angelic civilization walked the earth. Beings of intelligence and power served under Lucifer's rule. They built, they organized, they inhabited. Then rebellion came. Judgment followed. Desolation was the result. Possibility 2. A prior physical creation actually thrived. A world that functioned, had order, maybe even advanced development. Then it was wiped clean. Judgment erased it. The 6 days of Genesis weren't creation. They were reconstruction. God was reforming what had been destroyed. Possibility 3. The earth itself is ancient, beyond what we calculated. But the 6-day sequence was a reset-up specifically for humanity. Genesis 1 isn't the beginning of the earth. It's the beginning of the story that matters to us. Each possibility has scripture threads running through it. None of them are settled in one single passage. That's intentional. The Bible doesn't spell it out, because it's not the main plot. Here's what most people miss. The Bible isn't a science textbook. It's a covenant document. It's a love story. It starts with Adam, because the story is about your relationship with God. Everything before Adam wasn't hidden to deceive you. It was set aside because it wasn't your story. But the fingerprints are still there, if you're willing to look. You find them in the contradictions between verses. You find them in the descriptions of destruction. You find them in the identity and authority Satan possessed before his fall. You find them in the very structure of how God describes creations. The deeper question isn't about the timeline. It's about what God's willingness to judge tells you about his character. If he wiped out an entire world before starting over, then what does that reveal? About what he values, about what he won't tolerate, about what he's willing to do again if necessary. That's not meant to create fear. It's meant to create clarity about who you're dealing with. You're not worshiping a God who overlooks rebellions. You're not following a force that tolerates corruption indefinitely. You're standing before a judge who will execute judgment, and you're also standing before a God who offers mercy before judgment ever comes. Adam wasn't the first creation. He was the first opportunity. He was the first human relationship God was rebuilding. He was the start of a covenant that would eventually include you. That changes how you read Genesis, not as a timeline of the earth's beginning, but as the beginning of God's plan to restore relationship through humanity. If you skip over the gap, you miss the mercy. If you ignore what came before, you miss what judgment looks like. If you don't acknowledge the fingerprints of prior worlds, you don't fully grasp why Jesus matters. Because Jesus isn't just saving you from personal sin, He's participating in a restoration that goes back further than Adam. He's redeeming creation itself from the desolation and chaos. He's reversing the judgment that made the earth tohu vabohu. The 6 days of Genesis weren't just busy work. They were a declaration that God doesn't leave creation in ruins. He rebuilds, He restores. He speaks order back into chaos. He did it before Adam. He's doing it in your life. He'll do it again when He returns. This is why the gap matters, not for speculation, but for understanding the heart of what God's been doing all along. He's not surprised by destruction. He's not overwhelmed by chaos. He's responded to it before He's equipped to handle it. Now, He'll handle it again when the age concludes. So the real question isn't what existed before Adam. It's what your own desolation is right now. What part of your life looks like tohu vabohu, formless, wasted, chaotic. Because the God who reconstructed a world is the same God standing before that destruction in your story. He's offering to rebuild. He's offered it before hell. Offer it again. The question is whether you'll accept His reconstruction or cling to your own ruins.